Hi, this is Naomi with Sword and Steel, and today I'm going to be showing you this line of paints. This is AK Interactive's Dual Exo. It's the complete line, and if that's all you wanted to see without any explanation to the particulars, then your video will be done shortly. If you wanted to find out any specifics I thought would be necessary to mention, then you should stay for the entire video, including about going through the airbrush, how well I like the thinner, and specifically the consistency and the opacity of each paint. Alright, so the very first thing I want to do with this is I need to read what it says on the side, of course. This is an acrylic polymer. Dual Exo is a professional paint technologically developed from an ultra-resistant acrylic polymer for painting without the need for priming, with maximum covering power and resistance. It is a self-leveling acrylic paint with a satin finish. With that, the first question I had was, can I use this paint without a primer? So before I painted the bases that you just saw, I painted this Skaven miniature to test the paint adherence to Games Workshop plastic, and it worked great. I was impressed. It only took 2 layers to get the miniature up to this level, and that's just using dry brushing. I didn't thin down the paint at all. I just used a dry brushing method to get it to there, and with 3 layers you could easily have it completely covered. So I went ahead and tried something more complicated for the paint. I painted a couple of terrain crate miniatures, since those had been notorious in the past for even some primers not working properly over them. And much to my surprise, the 2 paints adhered to the plastic of this terrain crate pile of gold with just 1 coat, and even to this cage with just 1 coat, just fine. So I upped the difficulty even more and took this resin base I had 3D printed and used several different colors over it after I used the Xtreme White to start off. And since that did fine as well, I decided to go through the entire line and paint directly over these plastic Necromunda bases. This would confirm that every one of them can be applied directly to plastic, as well as show me how transparent they were. To answer the next question, how many layers do you need for these to leave an opaque coat? An important question because you need opaque paint to dry brush and base. You can use them to layer completely different colors over each other, and the less layers that you need to use, the less work it is for you. You can always thin down a paint to a greater transparency. It is much more difficult to make a paint more opaque. They have to start that way. That isn't to say I don't like transparent paints. I love transparent paints. Like contrast paints and washes and inks, I actually use them more often than opaque paints nowadays, besides metallics. But a transparent paint has to go over another paint, which would be your opaque paints. And a transparent paint designed to be that way works much differently than an opaque paint that turns out to be transparent. One accentuates or alters the color that is underneath them, while still keeping the area smooth and unblotchy, if it's a high quality one. The other is, it's a travesty. You'd have to use it over and over to get it to the point that you want, and that would inevitably remove any details you once had on your miniature. I suppose it would be fine for canvas painting, but even still, why would you use a paint that doesn't work the way that you want it to? Nah. First paint is 1A Xtreme White, and it is a fantastic white, needing only 3 layers for smooth coverage, even when thinned down. And if you do want to thin it down to use it as a layer paint, I would thin it to about a 4:1 ratio of paint to their thinner. You could use water, but the paint won't be as smooth to cover as when you use a proper acrylic thinner, and their thinner works great. For any of these colors, every single one has a great consistency, as in this consistency matches that consistency, matches that consistency, matches that consistency. Not opacity, but consistency, viscosity. It all matches, so 4:1 for the thinner. was what I was comfortable with, but I was really happy with the opacity of the whites, because it's sometimes hard to find a white that takes only 3 layers or less, depending on what you're going over, to get a smooth, consistent white color. And this one is 1B, and that one is a very pale gray. And it is what I did this guy in, so I'm going to show you that this guy was dry brushed on with the white 1B, and it's only 2 coats. So 2 coats from gray plastic is what this guy looks like after he's completely dry. Really nice. Okay, so the next is Solar Yellow 2A. You can take your time and do 4 layers from a dark color, but with white underneath, you can do it with just 1 layer. This one was actually much easier to use. This is 2B, 3 to 4 layers for complete coverage. Probably could get away with less, depending on what you're using it for. Really straightforward to use. Does this match as a shadow for this? Yes, it does. So you could definitely use these 2 together. Not all of them are work quite so nicely. I'll let you know if they do or if they don't. Or you can ask if I didn't mention it. This one is Power Yellow, and unfortunately, unless you want a darker yellow, you probably want to just go ahead and put white underneath. Multiple layers to get up to that point, while 1 coat over white got there. This one, 3B, same thing, as you can see. I'll put it at the top. The top part is over white, bottom part is over just a dark color over the plastic, and it doesn't even cover very well. Doesn't mean you can't use it for mixing, and for going through an airbrush over white, you'll have perfectly fine time covering it. This one was, in my opinion, a complete failure. For A, pure orange, absolutely not a good coverage. This one is, maybe it's mine. I don't think so. It felt like it was like the consistency was the same as all the others. However, it was completely transparent, and the only thing it wanted to fill was crevices, which, I mean, that could be useful for creating rust effects, but as you can see, this is 3 layers of the orange, and that's 3 layers over white, and again, through the airbrush, you could use it. Just want to be careful because it's so transparent, but I certainly don't suggest using it with a regular paintbrush because this one is not orange. This one is, no. All the other ones are great, that one's not. But you could put some kind of grime over a metallic and then finish it off with this color as a rust effect, and in that way you could make some use of it. This one wasn't as bad. For B, Faded Orange. It still wanted to go over white more than it did by itself. You won't be able to put it on very smoothly, so just be careful. You, however, can use it to tint up other colors to orange if you're nice and careful. If you want it to be that vibrant orange that you see, though, just use it over white. This one is actually quite nice. It's not completely opaque. When I say it's not completely opaque, yes, if you did layer over layer over layer over layer over layer in the one spot, you would eventually get it up to this color, of course, but you're going to sacrifice the details of your miniature if you do that. So skip over that, put it over white, and save yourself some time, trouble, and the details of your miniature. However, if you like the darker look, you can work up from a dark red to the brightest red layer by layer. So it would probably be great for dry blending in that sense. That one's Supernova Red 5A. These two do work really nicely together. This one would be a nice base for the Supernova Red. This is Dirty Red, and it is a great color. 3 layers for complete opacity. I'd put this color on first, and then, as I mentioned, go build up with that to be whatever you want. I'm sure it needs only 1 coat in an airbrush. This is a great solid color. This one here is 6A Oxide Red. This one could probably get away with 1 coat, particularly if you're putting it over a darker brown, like that one, or a black, and want to recreate a leather look, which is what this color reminds me of. You can mix it a little bit with 7A to make a highlight of it, but just be careful not to use too much of 7A, since that's the yellow within this one is actually quite potent. This one is another one where it can literally just go over with one coat and be nice and solid. Perfect. It's called Propeller Fire 6B, and it's a great brown, definitely. This one is 7A. 3 coats would create a complete coverage, which, you know, for anything light, very little coats is testimony to a great color. And of course, even less than that through the airbrush. 7B and 7A don't seem to go well together for matching up colors. I think I'd want to add a little bit of this to mix with that to make the highlight for this color. This one just has, it jives. This one with that one, or with that one, makes a nice Martian kind of dirt, if you wanted to do that. Oh, right, and 2 coats for a clean coat. It makes it a little bit darker, but if you add more layers, then you can bring it up to this bright Asteroid Brown. Now, this one is called Twinkle Pink, and at a glance, it looks white until you put it together with white, and you get to see that it's actually a subtle pink. Now, this is far too pale for pale skin. I have pale skin, and this is not something I would use to highlight skin on its own, of course. Char's pink does look like a nice pink to use. I would not use this as that highlight. I would mix something into it. I'll have to work on it, see what works. I think through the airbrush, where you have a lot more control, you'll be able to play with it a bit more. But it is very pale pink, and of course you do want to put it over white, since you can get its color after a single coat, as opposed to, I don't know, 5 or 6 layers over a darker color. However, if you wanted a very sickly pale, well, then that you could use, particularly over something that's like greenish or something. That'd be really creepy. Zombie skin. Alright, this one went on a lot more opaque, quicker than I thought. That was 2 to 3 layers. It came to this all by itself. Don't need to put any white under it. I thought I would need to, but nope. Nice and opaque, so bravo 8B, Char's pink. You can see that there's actually a very similar color, and I think starting off with that as your first color for skin, and going to that, and then doing something with that to start to work up to a pale color would work really well. Ranger Pink, 9A. I would just put white under this one to bring out the vibrancy of the color. I did get it up to its own color, but just use white. This one is, I don't know, 5 layers, and then the top half is just 1 layer with white. So save yourself some trouble and get some white. This one, very similar to that one. Well, not as bad as that one. Nothing as bad as that one. Similar to that one, though, it doesn't ever really get up to this color unless you want to completely remove all of the details. This one is 9B, but it's so pretty. Look, it's so pretty. I mean, it does go over consistently. It just doesn't go to this color unless you put it over white. This, I think, is just 1 or 2 layers of white, but this is so pretty. And yeah, I just showed what it looked like with 1 layer. It doesn't cover completely, but it does make for a very pretty effect. And then this one is probably 3 layers, and then over white I probably should have put another layer, but white is the way to go if you want it to be bright. This one is 10A. Surprisingly opaque for such a light color. 3 layers would definitely be enough for this one. It doesn't seem to be the right color to highlight this one by itself. I'm only assuming that 10A is supposed to highlight 10B. I'm just assuming. Maybe it isn't. Maybe they just wanted less numbers. I'm just saying. This one is not the right color to highlight 10B alone, but if you mix a tiny bit of a 9B in the mix, then you do have a great highlight color. It does, however, make a nice lavender, and I imagine white highlighting this would look really pretty wet blending rather than probably dry brushing, or just doing a mix of the two and dry brushing over that. So I think that's a very pretty color. This one is very opaque. You only need 2 layers to cover. This is great purple. It's nice that for the most part, every color you see in the bottle will exactly match the color that you see when you actually paint with it. Every single one. Really? We're not going to talk about that one. So you can just find the color that you like and know that you'll be able to match it really well. Okay, so that one's that one, and then we've got 11A, which is Ghost Green. This one can be opaque after 5 or 6 layers, so don't do that and put white under it first and get there in 2. I can't even tell which one I had to put like many layers on. Probably this is the one that I put only 2 layers on, and this bottom half was like way too many. It does get there, and it's a very nice consistency, but save yourself some time and put white down first. And it does highlight this color very nicely. This is Rebel Green. 3 to 4 layers for complete opaqueness. It'll still be quite solid after 2. It'll just be a darker color depending on the color that you have underneath it. And as I said, these two highlight each other really nicely. This one is definitely one that you want to put over white. You can go with 4 layers, not over white, or you can just go 1 layer over white. So that's what I would do, or two layers to be sure. This one works as a fantastic highlight color for this one, and this one is a true gem of paint. So think of this one as the sidekick for this one, because this one is gorgeous. So this is Viridian Green 12B, one of my favorites among the entire line, and it is because that's 1 coat. So as you can see, it likes to cover easy peasy. I think this one is 2 coats after that, because you didn't need to go any further. These 2 colors match lovely. You probably want to make a mix to do a medium highlight, and then you just take the most extreme highlights with a tiny bit of that. Super pretty. Super pretty. This one is Galaxy Green. This dull green is opaque after 3 layers and can be the highlight for 13B, which is Chaos Green. Wet blending, I would suggest, and then edge highlighting just to finish it off. You wouldn't want to overdo it because it's not quite right, but if you mix the 2 together, you will get a nice highlight for that. Just don't sharply highlight it with that because it's not going to match. And if you're looking for evergreens for winter, this combination is quite pretty. Or a somber rose leaf. Yeah, quite pretty one mixed together. Now we have 14A, which is Uranus Blue. It's opaque after 2 coats, surprisingly. Didn't need to put it over white. Opaque after 2 coats. Definitely after 3. I would not use it for 14B. It doesn't match. The hues are not aligned for a realistic look in my books, unless you were to make a mix of the 2 and use that as a highlight. However, this would make a great highlight for 16A. There we go, 16A. You want to mix it in and work up to it, but it matches this hue for a highlight much better than it matches that one. This one is another opaque paint that you could get away with only using 1 layer if you wanted to. You may want to add a second one just to smooth things out though, depending on how well you did the first time. It's a blue with the faintest hint of purple in it, and it's so pretty, making it beautiful for cooling down greens and turquoises alike, it being their shadow. 15A is not particularly opaque. You'll want to put white under it to make it vibrant. As you can see, there is a, well, I don't know if you can, I'm pretty certain you can see. You can layer it up to get to this point, but it's, if you want to save time and make it even brighter, just put white underneath it, and that way you only need to do 2 layers to get it up to this point. It would do well for a cold blue and the shadow of white, believe it or not. Yes, this dark blue would actually make a very nice shadow to white once you did a mix of them. It's the right hue for that. All right, this one is Almirant Blue 15B. 15B, this one has a wealth of color hidden in its depths. I have already lost some of the paint. When did that happen? Now, no paint is cured the first day, so this is of course going to come off. And I only put 1 layer on. Dun, 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 dun. You could get away with 2 layers of full coverage. This would make a great shadow for 15A or 16A or a lot of various different colors. It's really nice. It reminds me of ocean water, and this with it makes such vibrant blues. It's lovely. Okay, this one is Blue Bolt 16A, and this is a beautiful blue that covers with only 2 to 3 coats and will be good for mixing and making ocean or bright water effects, particularly if added to a green. This is a great vibrant blue, and I didn't even put it over white. I might get a little bit brighter over white, but it's quite bright by itself. This one is called Turbo Blue. It is not very blue, very dark gray-ish with a very soft tint of blue. Almost black in most lights. I think I'd use it as a deep shadow color over using black. So instead of black, I would use that color, since shadows aren't generally black in daylight, so your eye will pick up on that and it will seem more realistic to you even if you don't consciously know why. It also has great coverage as well, only 2 to 3 layers for complete coverage depending on how you thin it down. This one, Graphite Blue, although it's called blue, kind of looks like a bit of grayish green to me, but it's called Graphite Blue. It has only 2 to 3 coats for complete coverage, and it can highlight this color to make it look more unsaturated. It can highlight this color to be very, I don't know, military style. And this one is Lunar Blue, and I don't know why it's called Lunar Blue. This is just really dark gray. I guess it has a tint of blue-ish. Only 2 layers needed to cover, perhaps only 1. It's a little bit hard to tell because it's so close to the color of the gray plastic on whether I did a good job of it or not, but I think it is a quite an opaque color. And now we go to this pale 18A Starship Grey to give it a comparison to the White B Robot White, which is off-white, which would certainly make a good highlight for this if you wanted it to. A nice stone color, I would say. This one has over a darker color, you'd need about 4 coats, or just a couple coats over a white, so that's what I would go with. I wouldn't suggest this one for dry brushing unless you had a very good dry brush for the job, because it's not exactly as opaque as some of the other ones. But if you mix it in with one of the more opaque ones, or you're just very careful and have a great dry brush, then you could do that. NCC Grey. This one is just a nice standard gray. Only need 2 coats for complete coverage. It's slightly warm, a good base for a variety of colors, and a good starting point for something white if you don't want to use a blue. This one is Cosmic Dust, and yes, this one can highlight this one, and that one can highlight that one when it's on that one. This one is just a nice standard gray, good after 3 coats. And this one is Pitch Black. Well, Infinity Black it's called. 19B Infinity Black. And I believe, I could have been imagining it, I believe it's a tiny bit thinner than all of the others. I could have been imagining it. It's so like the others that I'm not exactly certain. But still, it needs only 2 coats to completely cover something, it's a very nice black to use. I would certainly give it to new people who want a black because it's a great consistency to start off with. You only need to thin it down a very little bit and it covers well. Alright, and now we get to the metal ones. As you can see, this is 20A or Auryn, and I put it over white and over a dark color. If it's over a dark color, it will be brighter in the crevices, which isn't exactly what you want for a realistic metallic, but over white it's quite nice. And I imagine over a nice brown color, like maybe this one, or even that one, you can have a nice metallic effect. So you can turn any warm colors into metallics. But the closer you stick to orange, but not those oranges, the closer you stick to orange or brown, the better it'll suit what's underneath it. This one is Gold Eclipse, and it's a very nice gold for weapons and anything you want dark, serious, sinister spin to your gold. 20B. I think edge highlighting with 20A, just because it's, again, not completely opaque, so edge highlighting rather than dry brushing would give you a nice crisp metallic look. But if you were looking for aged gold, then haphazard dry brushing of 20A would make a very nice aged gold effect. Oops. This one is silver, 21A, and it does not want to go over very smoothly. So it's really going to care what's underneath, but you can put so many different colors underneath it. You can put a dark gray and then it'll be a darker gray metallic. You could put over a dark blue and then it'll be a darker blue. To give you an example, what I mean by that, I put under here I put 1A, and I put Cobalt Blue, and then I dry brushed silver over top to show you kind of what you would be expecting with a couple layers. So it cares what's underneath it, but you could make some interesting effects with it for sure. And then lastly, Gunmetal, which you can certainly highlight with that. Again, with edge highlighting, unless you want it to look kind of messy. It would only be messy over flat surfaces. This is one of the harder things to make it smooth over. It looked just fine over things that had multiple surfaces. Like, I don't know, chainmail or stuff like that. You could certainly dry brush over. Just be careful not to add too much because it won't be a vibrant effect. So you might start adding too much because you're impatient. Maybe that's just me. But anyway, this is Gunmetal 21B. This one took only 2 coats to make it a nice solid silver. And that is them. Now lastly is the thinner. I tried out the thinner. Through the airbrush, I would suggest a 2-to-1 ratio for smaller nozzles. You could get away with a 3-to-1 ratio for any of these paints, any of these. Through a 0.5 nozzle. This is a very nice thinner. I've used it for a variety of different paints now, and not necessarily just these ones. I've used it to thin out metallic paints. When I was making the video for my Astra Militarum models, I wanted to use Castellan Green, so I grabbed this Castellan Green, and it turns out that this Castellan Green is actually 12 years old, and when I opened it up, it looked more like, it looks something like this Celestial Grey, which is 10 years old. This is what it looked like. Let's see, this is what Celestial Grey is supposed to look like, and this is what you see. So that is what I saw, and I was like, maybe I should get a new one, but I know how to reconstitute them with thinners. And I wanted to try out if this would reconstitute it, see how nice a thinner it is. And it did, and you have seen it on my nails. It's not going to necessarily be perfect in all places, but it is good enough for me for a few more years. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make certain to like it if you did enjoy it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already and you find these sort of things useful. And I will catch you in the next video. I hope you have a great one. Bye! Thank you very much, patrons. Your financial aid has allowed me to purchase one of each of these paints just so that I can try them out to infinite item. So I appreciate the help in doing so and keeping this channel alive. So another way to check the opacity of your paint is whether you can see through it when you put it on one of these. I'll show you. So there's the worst one. Well, we can even show the white in comparison. This one was quite good. We'll show this one too. By the way, I put 2 agitators in all of them to make certain I can mix it well. Alright, now when you put it through your brush, see that? Do you see how I do that? And you can see right through it. Alright, let's clean it out and go through that. See the difference between thickness, opacity. You can see through it, but not at the same amount. And don't mix white. Alright, don't mix. And then the white will be in between the two. Still much better than that. So, with only a couple layers, that white is great.